We've got a very, very special episode today. I'm on location at Historic Locust Grove, and we're going to do a special episode about these two cakes. Thanks for joining us today on this cooking episode. We're here today at Historic Locust Grove. It's located in Louisville, Kentucky, and I've got with me Brian Cushing. He's the director of programs. Amy Liebert, she is...
I am the theatrical director for our first-person interpreters.
That's a lot. And we've got this really interesting story, apparently, about these two very beautiful cakes. But there's a scandal behind these cakes. Give me a little bit of the story.
Well, in 1810, the second daughter who grew up here, Eliza Cron, wrote a letter that her sister, Anne, her older sister, had been off at a family wedding, and she actually brought her back some cake. But the thing that she found most amusing about this wedding that her sister had been to was that Cook Robin, an enslaved cook, the letter said that through mistake, she took one of Eliza's aunt's best cakes and left one of the brown sugar cakes that was intended for the enslaved population for the wedding. And this was apparently...
So we have a cake swap.
We have a cake swap. And so our question has been, did these look enough alike to mistake them? Or is this maybe, just kind of a little bit of passive resistance?
Was it on purpose?
Yeah.
And so we're going to find out a little bit about these cakes. We're going to have to do a little bit of conjecture, but we definitely have some things we can go on with this. We're not going to cut into these cakes right now. What we're going to do is bake a couple of cakes. And we're going to see what a typical, let's say, late 18th century, early 19th century wedding cake might be like. And we're going to have to do a little guessing about what's happening with this other cake. Let's go to the kitchen. Let's bake some cakes.
Let's get started.
So here we are in the kitchen and we've got everything to bake these cakes. Let's go through the ingredients. Exactly what do we have here?
Well, we've got the ingredients here for both what would possibly have been one of the best cakes.
Right.
Because the letter talks about Aunt's best cakes.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you can see a lot more ingredients over here on this side.
Right. So this is the fancy cake.
And this will be our very basic brown sugar cake that possibly might be the kind of thing they would have given to the enslaved workers.
Okay. So what are the ingredients here? Let's see. This is basically a standard great cake from the 18th century. So we've got our separated egg whites. We've got egg yolks. I've got butter and sugar that we're probably going to cream together. We've got flour. What is this? This is brandy. We've got spices that go in
absolutely.
this. So this is cinnamon, but you could put something like nutmeg.
Mace, nutmeg would be great.
Lots of stuff. And then
we've got our sweetmeats.
Yeah, sweetmeats, which are a standard thing you'll see in the grape cakes from this kind of 18th century time period.
And probably one of the first visual cues that this was not the correct cake when you cut it open.
All right, so what do we got over here?
A lot of the same things, a few differences and much simpler. We've got also our separated eggs. We've got our whites and our yolks. And then over here, our butter again, but our brown sugar. And you can see that a lot thicker. It's still got the molasses in it. Mm-hmm. And of course our flour.
Right. And instead of brandy on this cake, we're using a little bit of straight white whiskey. So what's our first step in construction?
Well, the first thing we want to do is get a little bit dirty here.
Okay.
Because we're going to start creaming our butter.
Okay.
All right, and of course, one of the best ways to do this, especially on a cold day like today, is to just get in there with our hands and cream it up and make it warm.
So we're mixing the sugar and the butter together.
Yeah, we're going to get that sugar in there. So the white sugar over here and our brown sugar over here. And it'll be interesting to see side by side how much easier it might be, or if it doesn't matter, to have the white sugar worked in by hand and this thicker, more molassesy brown sugar. Now, of course, as you guys are seeing, one of the challenges on a cold day like today is not only getting it soft, but keeping it soft. So what we might want to do is actually set these back down by the fire while we go ahead and move on to the next step with our eggs. Next is the really hard part.
Okay.
Because this is a cake that does not use any kind of modern chemical leavening agent. Mm-hmm. The way that we make it rise is through aerating our eggs as much as possible.
Sounds exciting.
It is. It is exciting. It is going to give us a real workout. So we're each going to pick up a bowl here.
Okay.
And the goal is that we are going to whisk these eggs that we have separated for probably about an hour.
So 5 minutes.
Well, we'll see how they are after 5 minutes.
Okay, an hour. So we have them separated. We have eggs and the yolks separate, but we have to whisk them all.
We do, and we're gonna whisk these until they really don't look like the same substance anymore. It's gonna be almost like you're making a meringue.
Yeah.
That they will really just fluff up and become this wonderful leavening agent with all of the air bubbles we're gonna get in here.
Well, I got a few air bubbles.
Yeah, you do, but you're gonna need a lot more.
Okay. I think. What do you
Okay,
think?
I think the hard part is over. I think we're there. From here,
right.
it will be easier.
Sure. So now that we got these separately whipped.
Now we bring them together. We're
Okay.
going to very delicately fold the yolks into the whites.
Okay, and we're doing our best not to get.
We want
air
to save
knocked
all
out.
of these
Yeah.
air bubbles because that's our leavening agent.
Okay.
So Brian, if you want to get these yolks in here. Now we're going to go back to the fire and check in on our butter and sugar. Here's our white sugar and our brown sugar. And the last thing we probably want to do is just whip the sugar a little bit before we mix them together to get a little more air in there.
Okay. So we're gonna figure out how to get these eggs folded into this butter concoction. Wow.
And once again, we want to be very careful and very delicate. Which really makes you think about how many people might have been working in a kitchen like this. Especially for these big recipes that call for so many eggs, so much flour for these great cakes.
And now.
Now
what?
the flour.
Now the flour.
Next
so
up.
This goes in a little bit at a time.
Yeah, we keep just this process of trying to very gently fold it in.
Okay.
All right, while we're mixing this up, we've forgotten one very important ingredient,
Okay.
and that is our brandy.
Oh, yeah.
So let's go ahead and add this in right now.
Okay, I'll add this in. And I've got rose water. This goes in too.
Absolutely, because
Okay.
you are making the best cake.
Okay, and how much rose water? do we
Usually
need?
calls for about a gill, which is about the same as 4 ounces.
Okay.
So that's going to be it for this simple brown sugar cake over
Okay.
here. But of course, for the best cake, we have a lot more wonderful ingredients to add.
Okay.
So we've got our cinnamon, and then we've also got these wonderful sweetmeats that we're going to add in there. So today we've got some apricots and some raisins that are going to go in as well.
Okay.
From here, they just go into the hoops and into
Okay.
the oven.
Well, we've got some hoops here. These are our wooden hoops, and we've got these lined with paper, right?
Absolutely.
This is parchment paper. You can see they're all buttered on the inside. If you want a little bit more information about prepping these kinds of hoops for a cake like this, you can go to our 12th night cake episode, and we spend a lot of time talking about exactly how to get these hoops prepped with the paper, or else your cake is going to stick to it and everything else. So we just get this batter into these, and then they're ready to go into the oven.
In it
right?
goes.
Okay.
So if you're doing this at home, you're going to want to set your oven to about 350 degrees and bake it for about 2 hours.
Okay, so these cakes are ready to go in the oven, right?
Let's get them in the oven. Let's
Okay,
go.
Let's go.
These guys baked up. You can see they look great. Kevin actually did some magic and iced these up because I am not an icing master. But you can see what happens if these are both iced. One of these is the special cake, right?
Right.
One of them is the one with all the sweetmeats and the wonderful white sugar and who knows what. And the other one is our brown sugar cake. And if they're done like this,
The only difference I'm seeing is a little bit more height on this one.
well, each one comes out different.
Right,
so-
yeah.
And she even didn't it sort of imply there were more than one best
Exactly.
cakes?
Yeah, it was
Right.
one of the best cakes
Right.
that she took, yeah.
So, I mean, every cake's a little bit different. So, we don't know at this point which one's which. If these were brought to the table at some feast or meal, obviously we would have a hard time figuring out which was which. Now, Kevin knows which one's which. If these were brought to the table, everybody's
Right.
thinking, hey, it's normal, looks
Yeah.
like a cake, right?
Absolutely.
And then, hey, we're gonna serve it to the guest, and whoa!
Something's wrong.
So let's cut in. I'll let you cut that one.
Thank you.
And we're gonna cut into this and see what we've got.
Oh, I was wrong.
Look at that.
So was I.
Gorgeous.
Wow, look at that. And there they are.
Oh my goodness.
Well, wow. These cakes look amazing. I mean, there's differences. What do you think?
Well, obviously we've got the sweetmeats in one, but you can also see the difference in the color of the sugar. So you can see how this blender got discovered. And it's important to realize we haven't tasted these yet, that so much of this is the status of the white sugar.
Oh, yeah.
Because when we were researching this, we went through Diderot's encyclopedia, and sugar refining then and now is about separating the molasses out of the sugar crystals.
Yeah.
So the brown sugar that still had molasses in it was less processed, less expensive, and not quite the status symbol. So I'm imagining poor Mrs. Gwathmey, who was meaning to serve this very important, elegant cake to her friends.
I want to say too, if we haven't already, we have some great research partners from Colonial
Yes.
Williamsburg and Plymouth Plantation and Alfam, all kind of helped us on this journey to discover what 18th century brown sugar was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kimberly Costa at Colonial Williamsburg, who works in foodways, very much held our hands through this process.
Kathleen Wall was a friend at Plymouth that really kind of helped us through this.
Right. Anytime you have these little mysteries,
Right.
They take a lot of digging. A lot of people you really got to connect with to keep teasing out these concepts and what the real differences were like. I say, let's taste them.
Let's do it.
All right. I'm starting with the brown sugar.
Let's start with the white one.
Oh, that's good.
Right off the bat, I'm picking up the rose water and the brandy that went into the white one.
The brown one is good,
It's very good.
but I mean, it is just consistently, kind of plainish.
The white one is definitely very special.
That is very special. The brandy in there. Mm-hmm. But I also feel like we might appreciate the brown sugar one more now. This is the sort of thing I could see getting at a coffee shop or something. Probably paying a lot of money for. Because we're not as obsessed with the color for the status anymore.
Right.
Well, and unfortunately, fruited cakes like these great cakes from the 18th and early 19th century, everyone relates them with fruit cakes.
Right.
And fruit cakes are, for us, relegated to a particular season of the year, and generally people make fun of fruit cakes and they're all bad, and this is wonderful. Well, this has been a really exciting episode, and I think there's if you want a little bit more story about what is going on with the building of these cakes, we're going to try to do a little bit more in-depth where we just basically talk about the process that we went through on coming up with the cakes, the research they had, the research we brought along with us about how we were going to build these cakes. It was an adventure.
Absolutely.
We spent a long time on this episode, and it was quite an adventure. So if you want to hear that, I don't know if that episode is going to come out right away or in a couple of days, probably in a couple of days. Watch for that. That's going to be a longer, in-depth episode where we talk about the process that we went through just to make this episode. I really want to thank Brian and Amy for bringing this particular story to this series. It was a special story, one that has a lot to it, a lot of components that we had to work out, and more to sort of discover than your standard recipe.
Absolutely.
So it was a lot of fun, and they taste wonderful. So thank you so much for inviting us, bringing this wonderful episode, and helping, of course. I couldn't have made these cakes without you. And Kevin for doing the icing. I wasn't going to do that. And they had to be iced.
Absolutely, because otherwise it would have been so much easier to tell the difference. You can see those raisins and apricots coming right up out of the top.
Well, and this really shows, I think, how this could really have been an honest mistake.
Yeah. So we'll cover that more in depth in the next episode. Thank you so much for coming along with us as we experiment with these things, as we actually sort of discover. We're doing sort of live archaeology with cooking. It's a fun thing. And I want to thank you for joining us, for sharing this with us as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th and early 19th century.